Former LAPD officer turned activist Alex Salazar joins me today to discuss George Floyd and the Derek Chauvin murder trial. Hey, Alex, welcome to the show. This is your second time coming on my show and speaking to me about law enforcement issues, and I just want to thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. I'm always happy to join you, my friend. I mean, what else can we say? We're living in some interesting times.
Well, today we're going to talk about George Floyd and the Derek Chauvin murder trial. First of all, let me ask you: have you been following the trial?
I have, yes.
And so, basically, what are your thoughts? Just an overview right now.
Well, it's a game changer when you have his supervisors, the police chief, the trainers, and others that were in the loop as to what happened exactly that day, testifying against him. And so here what they're doing is they're finally breaking the code of silence, and the truth is coming out.
Now, here's the interesting thing. You and I both have law enforcement experience. Based on our training and our experience, did you ever think that you could be arrested and prosecuted for something that you did? Or did you think that because of your training and your experience that you were just above the law?
Well, having that badge, you were able to exploit people and do things and get away with things that other people, of course, wouldn't. And so back in the days when you and I came on, that was business as usual. This, of course, is the year 2020 when this happened, and it's a different era.
Now, just basically, how difficult is it to prosecute a police officer?
Well, as most people know, it's very difficult to prosecute a police officer because the police officer has a culture directly behind him that supports what he's doing. Many times they try to paint this as something, well, the officer has to deal with this type of thing day in, day out, and the public can't understand. However, the police officer is supposed to be trained in being able to handle these matters and should be able to act professionally. However, what we saw happen on that day was quite the contrary.
Now, I've been watching the trial very closely, and it seems that the judge is he just doesn't seem like a nice person, and it seems like he's bullying the witnesses. You think TV court cases will deter people from coming forward? Because I mean, they're getting so much pressure and so much media attention. It's hard on these witnesses.
Oh, absolutely. Just having the eye of the world here, especially in this case, the scrutiny over each and every word and how they come off is going to be a deterrent for potential witnesses who do want to come forward and just being the spectacle and drawing away from the defendant himself. So yes, absolutely.
And it appears to me too that the judge and of course the prosecutors on the police officer side, but do you think the police officers that they get too much leeway, that their word carries too much weight?
Traditionally, yes. I believe that that is under scrutiny now. Before, the police officer's word, the sworn testimony that is, was, it was carte blanche. You were believed that you were telling the truth. However, with so many cases now where there's been all this fabrication and people seeing what's been going on for the longest, I believe that has changed now.
Have you ever experienced an in-custody death or a medical emergency similar to what George Floyd went through?
A couple times, yes.
So how did you handle it? Well, what was the difference between your situation and what Derek Chauvin, his situation?
Well, I recall a incident in Rampart Division as a rookie officer, me responding to a home where a individual had been subdued, a male, and he was high on drugs, and they were doing just that, pressing upon his neck, and who would know that he would die also that day, and of course he was under the influence too. And so, but what I saw that day happen was, the officers overreacting. The person was already subdued. They had a bedding around him, a mattress that they had been able to put on him to hold him down, and still yet they were beating him with a baton. And to me, there was six guys and three men ready to shoot him. I mean, they were just right there ready to shoot him in case that they had to take him out. And I believe it could have been handled different. But of course that was 1990. Okay, just a year before Rodney King would finally be captured on tape, and we saw what happened to him. This was just simply business as usual. What has been going on for the ages with law enforcement using excessive force.
Now, I've been in a couple of circumstances where I've had arrestees go into cardiac arrest. One in particular, a person was breathing very hard. And the thing about it is I didn't need him to tell me that he couldn't breathe because I could see it. And so I immediately called for the paramedics to come because I was concerned about the person. And I handled it totally different than the way those Minneapolis police officers handle it. So we had the paramedics there, and while they were there and we were explaining to the paramedics, well, what was happening, the guy went into cardiac arrest. And he didn't die because the paramedics were there. But, the thing is that when these officers knew that there was a medical emergency, had they called paramedics, it could have been a whole different story. I mean, what are your thoughts about that, about how they reacted?
Absolutely. Well, as we all clearly saw in the video, he's there for several minutes on his neck and not believing or expecting that something's going to be happening to this individual in the most sensitive part of your body, the neck. Just put a little bit of pressure and with the finger, imagine a knee. And so, this guy just read it totally wrong. I try to ask myself, what's going on there, because he's just kind of like in a trance, lost in space. Meanwhile, this guy's begging for his life and there's no reaction out of him. It kind of makes me believe, and there's no excuse for it, of course, that maybe he was just used to this type of thing and he'd become so desensitized, so far gone that, like I said, he was just lost in that moment.
You have your pulse on law enforcement, the law enforcement community. Do you think police officers, retired police officers, want to see a conviction?
Absolutely not. They're trying to deny it, as the Catholic Church, of course, tried to deny rampant molestation within its ranks of priests. Okay, and it goes up, and so no one wants their authority to be questioned, especially police officers who have tended to be very arrogant with extreme power. And so this to them is like, oh my gosh, what else is going to happen next? I mean, absolutely not. They don't want this happening. I know I myself, if I was still on the job, I'd just be thinking, the job's going to get harder. It's going to get worse. That would be what I would be thinking of, instead of trying to be, well, there's reform that's coming on, there's change that's happening. And so I don't see it that these guys are actually saying that this is a good thing.
So what does it mean? What does it mean if he gets off? What are police officers going to think? What's going to happen?
Well, we saw what happened with the recent trial in St. Louis, where the black undercover officer was beaten. Apparently, a couple of the defendant police officers were found not guilty by an all-white jury. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I did. Definitely, I heard about
right. That. And so, the possibilities there. Rodney King, same thing. Okay, and we saw what happened immediately after that too. And so it's a very volatile, scary situation. Should the jury come back and vote to acquit this police officer.
So do police officers start saying, we can do whatever we want now? I mean, do we start seeing more excessive force, blatant excessive force? I mean, what do you think is going to happen in the mind of police officers?
Well, we saw that, well, we know, I should say that there are certain racist police officers. I mentioned on your show, and I mentioned on several others, I myself became racist. My Mexican looking butt, and so you have these officers that are Caucasian, Latino, and some Black too, who like the status quo. They like things as they are. They like being in control. They like being able to be on these power trips and treat people bad. And now they're being questioned, and they should be questioned, of course, for this type of behavior, because that's not the job of a police officer to kill, maim, injure people. Our job is, when you look at and you hear that old slogan, protect, which means you're supposed to protect people,
Right.
and you take care of them, not beat them or kill them or shoot them and what have you, and then to serve. To serve means to have a heart to serve the people, to be there for them and to deal with their emotional problems and troubles. But you know how it is, how they used to say, well, I'm not an effing social worker, I don't care about that stuff. I'm just here to hook and book and take you to jail. And so that's precisely the problem with law enforcement today, is this really bad attitude, that a lot of these officers from the old school, from our time before that they still think, that, you can put a suspect in a car and it doesn't matter if they hit themselves in the head as they're getting in. Okay. Leadership has said that that's okay, though. Okay. And so this environment has been created for the longest where, we know what we're talking about. You need to shut the F up. Okay. And so we're in that process where all these things are coming out now, where before it was business as usual. I mean, you were one of the first whistleblowers to come out of in fact, you were one of the first whistleblowers I remember to really start speaking out, just as this whole Rampart thing came out with your book, Brian. I mean, you were, you were writing about what was happening. I never ever imagined that someone would do such a thing, but you actually did it, describing very vividly what was happening in our department at that time.
Right. Now, if we get a guilty verdict, what does that mean for law enforcement? Or are we in for happy days, or things are going to change?
Well, I think that it's going to be for the better, because they are going to know, okay, you shoot someone, you put your knee on someone's neck for a certain length of time, there are going to be repercussions. You're going to be the next, YouTube idiot, caught on tape, being filmed by the whole world. And unless you're into that kind of thing, being filmed, killing people, then you're going to be thinking twice before you do something like that, and maybe have more of a caring heart. But I mean, we see it's kind of a dog and pony show. After Rodney King, what happened? We had the Rampart scandal, and the scandals continue on and on and on, and constantly they want to be bringing in these blue ribbon commissions, and they don't do any good. They don't do any good. Training doesn't do any good, because it's all about the attitude. It's all about how they feel about trying to serve people, and that's not what they want to do. They don't really want to serve people. They want to serve themselves, take care of themselves, and that's the problem there. With law enforcement today, it is so far gone from what it was, I believe, originally designed. Okay, and we know that originally they were the slave catchers, but law enforcement, the way it morphed, it was supposed to be, we're the good guys, we're supposed to help out the people, but it's not like that. From what we see out there, there's so much fear within law enforcement, within officers, that they often react in a way that of course gets them in these troubles, that what we're seeing here today.
Right. So lastly, what do you think the outcome is going to be? Yeah.
I believe that with the fear, I mean, this is a political case, obviously, okay, but looking at the situation where you have the chief, you have the trainers, you have the partners, you have the 911 operator, you got all these people here that are testifying against this officer. I mean, everybody's flipping and rolling here now, because they don't want to be, the next target. And so I believe they're going to convict him, okay, and I believe that things will change here on out. It's not going to change entirely for some people, but it is going to cause a ripple effect within law enforcement where they're going to be, very, very, careful with what they do in the future.
Now, I think we'll get a guilty conviction also, but I'm not totally sure because, as you mentioned, during the Rodney King beating, we had the department testify against the officers. We had people in training say that's not how we were trained, but the outcome was still not guilty. So I'm not quite sure, but I think we're going to get a guilty verdict. But
I agree with you. Yeah.
But I want to thank you for coming on the show, and stay available because I'm gonna contact you again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me,
Okay.
Brian. Thank
All
you
right.
again, and great show, by the way.
All right. Thanks a lot. Let's see.
Thank you, my friend.